Hello, welcome to BEH 229 Family Counseling. Today we are going to be talking about the development of a family, including continuity and change. So we're going to be looking at family from the life cycle perspective. The life cycle perspective offers a positive view of the family's capacity to hold on to its stability and permanence at the same time that it evolves and changes its structures as new relationships, processes occur. During stressful life events, the family needs to have resilience to use its strengths, resources, and effective interpersonal processes to master the necessary transitions. And again, resiliency is this idea of being able to bounce back, overcome the problems that we encounter. The more resilient the family, the more competently it reorganizes to deal with disruptions and bounces back after temporarily being thrown off course because of a developmental transition. The picture on the right shows you the family life cycle. You start with the unattached young adult, then they are newly married couple, a family with young children, a family with adolescents, launching the family into the world, in other words, pushing the babies out of the nest, and then finally family in later years. Now, when we look at the life cycle perspective, one of the big issues that we deal with is family conflict. Interpersonal conflicts that develop within a family may signal the family's inability to negotiate a particular life cycle passage or transition point. In this situation, the family is thought to have become stuck between stages of the life cycle and requires reorganizing to better accommodate to the changing needs of its members. So, for example, if you have children and one of them is becoming a teenager, 13 or 14, their perspective is they want independence. And yet, as a parent, we know how dangerous those teen years are, and as a consequence, we become very much overseers of their behavior, which can cause conflict. It's inevitable, especially in the teen years. Different family life cycle stages call for the mastery of specific developmental tasks by its members. Developmental tasks refer to those activities or experiences that need to be mastered at various stages in the family life cycle to enable the family to move to the next developmental stage. And there are two kinds. Family tasks, for example, infant attachment to caregivers, and individual tasks, for example, developing one's identity during adolescence. So think of it from the perspective of there are group tasks and there are individual tasks, and they're all related to that development of the family unit. Culture plays a large role in dictating the family and individual tasks that must be mastered. These developmental tasks define role expectations throughout the life cycle. Before we go any further, just want to kind of give you a caveat here that any generalizations in the life cycle model should be seen within the perspective of a particular class, culture, and historical period. And in this case, we're looking at early 21st century America, and thus are open to periodic revision as changes occur in the larger society. So if you live in a different country, for example, if you live in India or Scotland, things are going to be different. This comes from an American perspective because that's where I am located. Individual family differences in ethnicity, culture, language, socioeconomic status, sexual identity, degree of acculturation, spirituality, and experiences with family violence may modify the nature of the stages and the developmental tasks that must be accomplished. For example, couples who do not have children experience a very different family life cycle. Relationships between parents, siblings, and extended family members all undergo transitions as the family proceeds through the life cycle. Stages include, and again we talked about this on the second slide, young single adults leaving home, then getting married, have children. Those children become teenagers, then launching those children into the world, and then living together in later life. These stages outlined do not fit every family, especially considering our diverse society, but it draws attention to the multi-generational nature of family life as the family continues to change and evolve. Or, as we learned in The Lion King, the circle of life. Successful management of challenges in one stage has a significant impact on its ability to effectively carry out the tasks of the subsequent stages. If the family becomes destabilized as its members struggle to accommodate change, one or more of the family members may develop symptoms of a psychological problem. For example, a teenage son wants to quit high school in his junior year. His parents fight about it, the father siding with the son and the mother wanting the son to finish high school. The son becomes angry and withdraws from mom. The mom becomes depressed, the father feels alienated from his wife, and the marriage begins to fall apart. So when we look at issues in a family, they are very complex, and there are so many aspects to the family that we have to understand in order to truly get to the root of the problem. Each stage is precipitated by a particular life event, what Zilbach refers to as a family stage marker. During each stage, family development proceeds through family task accomplishment, and family characteristics of the previous period are carried over into the next stage. If any tasks are incomplete or blocked, development is delayed or suspended, and these difficulties are carried into the subsequent stage of family development. For example, parents who are afraid to send their kids to daycare or school may continue to have issues as the child grows into a teenager and young adult. These fears of separation may delay the young adult from moving out on their own. So, on the one hand, you look at the family, you say, oh, they're so close. On the other hand, it is the natural order of things for young people to move on and create their own families. So these tasks can be very difficult and challenging for the family, but these things do happen. Continuity and change. Both continuity and change characterize the family system as it progresses through time. In some cases, the changes are orderly, gradual, and continuous. However, in other cases, they may be sudden, disruptive, and discontinuous. Both call for transformations in the organization of the system, otherwise known as the family, and not all continuous or discontinuous change leads to symptomatic behavior. Families have developed effective collaborative ways of coping with adversity and hardship, what Walsh called relational resilience, and they may even emerge hardier than before. Certain discontinuous changes are so disruptive to family life that they suddenly and profoundly transform a family system so that it never returns to its former way of functioning. Hoffman points particularly to events that affect family membership. In other words, events representing family gains, meaning children acquired through a remarriage, or family losses where the parents separate or there's a death of a parent or sibling. Transitions that require major shifts in roles, for example, a young mother with a preschool child returns to work outside the home, a husband loses his job and cannot find reemployment, may produce discontinuous change in the family system. So, discontinuity is not pleasant, but it can be worked through. Other issues that impact family development include the parents' work life. Do both parents work? Are they in a job that requires overtime? Some families, mom or dad can get home every day at 5 o'clock. Other families, it's a gamble of when they'll be getting home. Divorce, adoption, or births of younger siblings, being an older parent or a very young parent. People are having babies now in their 40s and potentially in their 50s. And that can be fraught with its own set of difficulties. Very young parents oftentimes lack the skills or patience to really be effective parents. Step parents, unmarried couples with children, there's all kinds of legal issues that go on there, and same thing with the same-sex couples with children, but you also get the lovely society judging whether or not they are fit parents. The Life Cycle Outlook provides a useful organizing framework for understanding a family's conflicts and negotiations, flexibility in adapting to changing conditions, and the appearance of problematic or symptomatic behavior at a particularly treacherous crossroad. Its major value is to establish a template for family difficulties, reveal linkages over generations, and focus on family resilience and continuity. Problems develop within a family with a dysfunctional structure when the family encounters a transition point that lacks the flexibility to adapt to the changing conditions. The most prominent contemporary family life cycle model is presented by McGoldrick, Carter, and Preto Garcia, who broaden the framework to include a multidimensional, multicultural, and multigenerational perspective, along with the individual, family, and sociocultural perspectives. They provide a more encompassing, intergenerational view of the impact of multiple stresses on a family's ability to navigate transitions. They believe the flow of anxiety within a family is related to both vertical and horizontal stressors. Vertical stressors are patterns of relating and functioning transmitted historically through generations. Family attitudes, stories, expectations, secrets, taboos, and loaded family issues passed along from grandparents to parents to children. The vertical axis represents those aspects of our lives that are the hand we are dealt. What we do with them is the question. And this can include racism, poverty, homophobia, and family prejudice. Horizontal stressors describe the events experienced by the family as it moves forward through time, coping with changes and transitions of the life cycle. The predictable developmental stresses, as well as unexpected traumatic ones, such as an untimely death, birth of a handicapped child, or a serious accident. Major traumatic experiences, including terrorism, war, economic depression, and natural disasters, are also included here, as are social policies affecting the family. So, for example, in a same-sex couple that were not able to marry until a few years ago, that Supreme Court decision that allowed them to marry changed everything, because now legally they are a couple and can experience the same tax and social benefits that couples get as a matter of course. When horizontal or developmental stresses intersect with vertical or transgenerational stresses, there is a major leap in anxiety in the system. The point where the axes converge then becomes a key determinant on how well the family will manage the transition point. And this chart on the right goes into detail about some of the vertical and horizontal stressors people experience. So let's talk about the stages of family development. First, single young adults must complete their primary developmental task, which is separating from the family of origin without cutting them out and fleeing to a substitute emotional refuge. Oftentimes, and you'll get kids who just don't get along with their parents for whatever reason, and they will separate and go to an emotionally supportive group of people that become just like parents to them. And in that case, they're not truly separating. They should separate, but there should be some level of relationship with one's family of origin, unless there is physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, all of those abuse issues. That's when separation is actually the best thing you can do, and cut them off. Number 2, coupling, which is characterized by moving from independence, i.e. single, to interdependence, i.e. committing to another person. In the case of a legal marriage, more than a union of two people is involved. The commitment represents a change in two established family systems and the formation of a subsystem, the new couple in each. This means also detaching from one's family of origin and aligning oneself with the new subsystem. You're not cutting them out of your life, you're just creating a new subsystem. It's like taking orange juice and cranberry juice and mixing them together, and now you have a whole new drink. Creating a family where the two people have come from separate cultures with differing customs, values, and rituals, beliefs, gender roles, prejudices, aspirations, and experiences. Parts of both paradigms must be retained so that each person maintains a sense of self. The two paradigms must also be reconciled in order for the couple to have a life in common. So, for example, if you have somebody who is Roman Catholic who marries someone who is Jewish, they're going to have to talk about what's going to happen in the month of December. Will a Christmas tree be put up? Will the children celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas, or just one? Are there certain aspects of the culture that need to be, cherry-picked in order for both mom and dad, or both moms or both dads, to feel comfortable? In the process of dealing with these differences, spouses arrive at new transactional patterns. They are obliged to decide which family traditions and rituals to retain from each of their pasts and which they wish to generate as their own. Together, they need to determine the degree of closeness to or distance from each of their families of origin they wish to maintain. Some couples decide that they're going to move 3,000 miles away because they don't want to deal with their families of origin. Other couples might move 10 minutes away, 20 minutes away, or even just an hour away so that there's some distance between themselves and the family of origin. And oftentimes it can be also based on their jobs and other issues. Becoming a mother and a father represents a significant transition point in a family's life, changing forever the relatively simple roles between mates who are childless. After the child is born, everything, time, money, leisure, space in the home, relationships, will be organized around the baby. Everything is managed around that baby who is now part of your lives. The family then engages in a vertical realignment. When the couple becomes parents, both move up a generation and now must provide care for a younger generation. Other members of the family suprasystem also move up a notch. Parental siblings become aunts and uncles. Nieces and nephew now become cousins. The parents of the new mother and child become grandparents. Having a child speeds up a young couple's need to connect or reconnect to their extended family network, whether it be for occasional child care or almost certainly for emotional, if not financial, support. When children reach adolescence, the family now faces new organizational challenges, particularly around autonomy and independence. Here, the family is not dealing with entrance and exits into the system, but rather with a basic restructuring of interactive processes to allow the teenager more independence. Parents may no longer be able to maintain complete authority, but they cannot abdicate that authority altogether. The task becomes even more complex in immigrant families where competing cultures, i.e. the country of origin versus the country where the family moved to, may contradict one another. For example, obedience versus independence. So In your average Japanese or Chinese family, the idea of obedience is absolutely paramount between a parent and a child. Whereas in the United States, our culture expects that teenagers will become more independent and rebel even more as teens. And so if you have a Chinese family move to the United States and their children begin to take on that American culture, they are going to have some serious culture shock when their child no longer shows them immediate obedience. While the teen is spreading their wings and looks for continued independence, their parents may be experiencing their own challenges. The parental midlife crisis, where one or both of the parents begin to question their career choice or their partner. And you oftentimes see parents choosing at this time to separate or divorce. Additionally, caring for their own parents. As parents get older, the grandparents are also aging and becoming dependent on their adult children for assistance. We call this generation the sandwich generation, because they're sandwiched between their teenagers and their elderly parents, and it's very challenging at this point in midlife. Then the children leave home, what we call launching them, and now parents must create an adult-to-adult relationship with their adult children. A major transition point for the middle-aged adult is apt to involve the death of one's elderly parents. And this is hard for people. Mom or dad is 80 and they lived a long, wonderful life, but you still miss them and you still struggle with feelings of, was I a good enough daughter or good enough son? And, depending on your cultural relationship with your family, it can be a point where it takes a long time to get over that death. And finally, retirement, illness, and widowhood. Retirement is likely to mean more than a loss of income. It also includes a loss of identity, status, purpose, and being an important part of a community. Family relationships must also be renegotiated. Retired parents must now cope with a dramatic increase in their daily time together, as well as coming to terms with one's own limitations and illness, especially cognitive declines. So, mom and dad retire. Maybe mom retired before dad or dad retired before mom. Now they're together 24 hours a day. They have to kind of learn to give each other space. They also need to divvy up the chores again. So now dad might like to cook more and mom may prefer to handle the money. There are all kinds of negotiations that need to take place as people get older. Other developmental sequences in families include something like divorce, which is a powerful disruptive event for everyone in the family. Approximately 1 million people get divorced every year. The rate is about 50% of marriages end in divorce. It typically occurs in stages, often marked by stress, ambivalence, indecision, self-doubt, and uncertainty, even when both partners agree that their marriage is no longer viable. That idea that dad or mom is no longer in the household is very nerve-wracking for parents because parenting with two people is hard enough. Parenting with one person makes it even that much harder. Single parent-led families have their own set of developmental issues. One parent households represent 1 in 4 families with children under 18. More than half of all African American children, 55%, and 31% of Hispanic children live with single parents. So what you're seeing here is a tremendous number of families where only mom or dad are the primary caretaker. This is a chart which basically gives you some of the information. Poverty is probably the biggest issue. When you are looking at poverty, if mom has primary custody, and mom usually does, they generally are living in poverty, unless mom has a kick-butt kind of job, or dad actually steps up and pays child support. Other developmental sequences in families include informal adoptions, in which relatives or friends care for children when birth parents are temporarily or permanently unable to do so. And this has a history that goes back to the slavery days. Nowadays, this is more likely seen when there is an addiction issue, or when the parent has to go to prison for a little bit. Mother-headed families especially are characterized, as I said, by a high rate of poverty, a high percentage of minority representation, and relatively low education. The chronic experience of poverty, violence, family conflict, substance abuse impacts family development. This is absolutely one of those things that you cannot escape some developmental problems. Many non-resident fathers do not pay child support or do so sporadically, and this is especially severe for single mothers who have never married. The divorced mother with physical custody of her children usually must deal not only with a lower economic status, but also with grief, self-blame, loneliness, and an inadequate support system. Single mothers often carry the entire burden of raising a child alone in what is often an emotionally and physically unstable environment, balancing the multiple responsibilities of work and family. Despite these obstacles, resiliency is often present, and as Anderson observes, that most single parents thrive by providing structure, values, and nurturance their children need, manage the household, and work a job. So the idea that you have all these single moms sitting at home watching Maury all day is actually quite false. Most single mothers have a job. Moving on to remarried families, approximately 69% of divorced women and 78% of divorced men remarry, and almost 1 in 3 marriages a year are remarriages. The median interval for remarriage for previously divorced men is 2.3 years, and for women about 2.5 years. About 30% of all divorced persons remarry within 12 months of becoming divorced. So, you can take that into account, that maybe there's some extracurricular activity going on before the marriage ends, where mom or dad is cheating with someone else and then they get together right after the divorce. But, also people, they find it difficult to parent alone, so if they find someone who can help them, they'll often go for that. Paisley and Garneau estimate that 65% of remarriages create stepfamilies, with the most common being stepmother, stepfather, blended, or stepfather, biological mother families. Remarriage involves transition from a former household to an integrated stepfamily household, a process Paisley and Garneau believe it is like immigrating to a new country. For many families, it may take up to 6 years before the step-parents can form a solid couple bond and work as a team to deal with the challenges of step-family life. Issues typically involve disorganization, reorganization, sometimes relocation, and the assigning of roles. However, resilient, well-functioning stepfamilies are more the rule than the exception. Those step-parents who demand instant love are likely to end up feeling frustrated and rejected. On the other hand, relationships within step-families that are allowed to blossom slowly often lead to caring and loving bonds that last a lifetime. And it's like approaching a skittish animal. You want to calm them and soothe them. You don't want to startle them. You don't want to make them afraid that their real mom or their real dad is no longer important. It's a matter of letting it happen as it happens, slowly and over time. Families with gay or lesbian teenagers have many of the same issues, but gay teenagers, when they strive to become independent adults, all as do their heterosexual counterparts, but at the same time they must also learn to cope with the psychological toll of living in a stigmatizing larger society. Parents often provide social support as young adults manage this transition, but gay and lesbian young adults report lower levels of parental support than their heterosexual peers do, with a direct link to increased depressive symptoms, suicidal ideation, and substance abuse. In terms of generations, Generation X, we started to see people leaving the closet in droves. And now, children who are in high school now or who have recently graduated from high school are having an easier time of it, but it's still a challenge because there are still places, especially in the United States, where homosexuality is still seen as a crime. And, for those of you who are not sure, you can go through tons of psychology books and they will explain how a person is often born gay. Most people who are gay are born gay, and it is a genetic combination of traits that will result in a gay child. And again, remember, most gay kids have heterosexual parents. While coming out may be painful and occur in stages, sometimes over a lifetime with different people, family, friends, employers, it is during the young adult period that they struggle to establish a gay identity typically begins. The young person with same-sex attraction experiences considerable anxiety, secrecy, and shame over same-sex feelings, all without being able to share these thoughts or feelings with family members or friends. Most young gay and lesbian individuals are raised by heterosexual parents within the dominant cultural norms and beliefs, making many of them have the same assumptions about relationships as their heterosexual parents. However, at the same time, they're experiencing homophobia in a largely unaccepting society, often including their family of origin. So the vast number of gay kids who have parents who do not approve of them often will run away. They'll turn to street prostitution, other types of sex work, and will be homeless trying to figure out a way to support themselves. And it's really a shame because, that child is gay because their parents carry the genetic anomaly. It's not because they're trying to torture their parent. In terms of gay parents, the 2010 census identified almost 650,000 same-sex couple households spread across all counties in the United States, which is about 1% of all couple households. By adding same-sex couples that have adopted children and those who have had children through donor insemination or through surrogate mothers, there may be as many as 12 to 15 million children residing in homes with gay parents in the United States. About 19% of all gay and lesbian couples are raising children. So that means that 4 out of 5 gay couples don't have children, 1 out of 5 gay couples do. Contrary to some myths, there is no evidence that gay or lesbian adults are less fit parents than their heterosexual counterparts, despite dealing with homophobia outside the home. And actually there was a study done a few years ago that demonstrated that families that had 2 moms actually have children that show greater educational and social efficacy over the long term. Some of the challenges for gay parents: teenagers of gay parents will often distance themselves from their parents in their quest to fit in with their friends. However, this distancing from parents is pretty normal for teenagers, but the children of gay teens, it has the added complication of hiding one's parents' sexuality. Goldberg showed that children of lesbian, gay, and bisexual parents are no more likely to be gay or lesbian than the average person and have no significant mental health issues as compared to the general population. Society, unfortunately, is much harsher on gay men as parents because society sees men as less nurturing. Finally, and we're just going to briefly touch on this now, but we'll talk about it more later in this class, the issue of minority parents. And, in the United States, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants are considered the dominant culture. So anybody who doesn't fit in that generally is considered a minority. The negative impact by the majority culture of minorities, including gay parents, includes feeling marginalized, social disapproval, and discrimination. And ultimately, the strength of the family to overcome these issues lies in their resilience. So we're back to where we started from, this idea of how well does the family come together and overcome the challenges that they will encounter inevitably through their life cycle. So that's it for today's lecture. If you have any questions, feel free to text or email the instructor. If you are not in our class, leave a comment and we will respond as quickly as we can. Thank you and have a wonderful day.